Well, July went by super fast. Hey guys, it's Madison and welcome back to my channel. So if you're new here, I'm Madison. I make new book videos twice a week. I really hope you consider subscribing because that'll really support me and encourage me to make more videos in the future. And today I'll be doing my July 2020 wrap up. July was a really good reading month for me, way better than June, where I only read 12 books. But this month, I read so many books. And just overall, July was a really good reading month for me. I read books that I own, I finished my entire Reading Rush TBR, and I also started one of the longest series I've ever read. And now I can share with you all the interesting books that I've read this past month. I read a total of 17 books in July. I read 2 2-star books, 2 3-star books, 10 4-star books, and 1 5-star book. And then when I'm filming this, I haven't finished one of the books that is on this July wrap-up, but I know that I will be able to finish that book by the end of July 31st. And like I normally do, I have a lot of 4-star books because I guess that's just normally what I rate them. But this time I adjusted my ratings at the end of the month so that I can see if my thoughts on books that I read at the beginning of the month have changed when I compare them to books that I've read more recently. So for example, I've changed a bunch of my 3-star ratings to 2 stars and then some of my 4-star ratings to 3 stars. And I have a lot of books to go over, so let's get right into it. The first book that I read in July is Glitter by April Lynn Pike. So this book I rated 2 stars, I think. I think I rated these 3 stars. Hold on, I need to check. I rated this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was a really interesting world, and I'm definitely glad that I read this book, but it wasn't amazing. There are some plot points that I didn't really understand and that I didn't really think should be in the book, but overall it was a really good read, and I even picked up the sequel, Shatter, and I feel like I love this book even more than I did Glitter. The world evolves so much, and you can really see how much the main character changes from the beginning of Glitter to the end of Shatter. Next, I read What I Lost by Alexandra Ballard. This book was so good. I loved it so much. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars, and it is very tear-jerking. That's the thing I'm going to start with because it is a very serious story about eating disorders and mental illnesses. It's just a lot of serious stuff going on in this book, and I really liked it. I feel like the author portrayed mental illnesses really well in this. The whole book doesn't focus all on mental illness, which I feel like that's a good thing for books like this. You can really see how much the main character struggles in this book with her recovery process and everything like that. I felt really sad at some points because this is a very emotional book and it's depressing at times, but you can see that this is the real process of recovering from an eating disorder. I really liked it. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars, and I almost cried near the end, which shows that this is a good book. Overall, it was really good. Next, I read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. So this is one book that I've been wanting to read for a long time just because it's on the anti-racist reading list. The book talks about a lot of the most prevalent themes in today's society. I feel like this is just a necessary read for every person out there. I rated this 4 out of 5 stars, not 5 out of 5 stars, because I definitely love the message that the book puts out there. But it's not a book that I would normally read. I actually listened to the audiobook version of this, so this was definitely a good book, and I would recommend it to anyone who wants to read it and learn more about racism in their society. Next, I read Ink, Iron, and Glass by Gwendolyn Clare. Originally, I rated this book 3 out of 5 stars because I was kind of caught up in the reading rush and making sure that I liked the books that I read, but now thinking back on it, I didn't really like it that much, and this is part of a duology. Normally when I read series like this, I want to read the next book as soon as I can, but with this I feel like I didn't really want to do that. That was a big red flag for me that I may have rated this book too high, so I bumped the rating down to 2 out of 5 stars. It was an okay book. Wasn't the best, wasn't the worst. So this is the book that is about like fictional written worlds coming to life, and it was a very interesting premise of the book, but I feel like it was just way too fast. Definitely way too fast for my taste. Oh yeah, and if I didn't say this before, I read this for the reading rush, so these next 7 books will be part of the reading rush. Next, I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. It is so good, and I absolutely love the circus setting and just getting to know all of these characters and the world and just how the circus came to be. And I also really liked how there was a little mystery element in there where there are these two people who are competing against each other, but they don't know who they are and they don't know when this competition is going to end. So I thought that was very interesting. I just like carnival books, I guess. I really loved Caraval by Stephanie Garber. That was probably one of my favorite series that I read last year, because this book is so good. So it's told in alternating timelines. So the first timeline it starts in like the late 1800s, and the second timeline starts in the early 1900s. And so it just rotates between those two, and as the book progresses, the timelines get closer and closer together. And I thought that was really interesting, and I loved seeing how throughout the course of the two timelines I could pick out little similarities that would kind of tell me how the book would go. But then again, I couldn't expect anything in this book because it was so shocking. I just love this book. Not enough to be 5 out of 5 stars, but still a really good read. Next, I read Imposter by Suzanne Winokur. This is another book that I read during the reading rush, and I loved it so much. I ended up reading all of it outside, which was for one of the challenges of the reading rush. It is a very short book, less than 300 pages, so I felt like this was the perfect book to read outside. And I'm glad I love this because I just flew through the book. And if you're looking for a really fast book to read to boost up your Goodreads challenge, then this is the book for you. This is also part of a duology, so I believe the second book is also pretty short. And if the second book is anything like this one, then I'm expecting it'll be another fast read. So I'm really excited to read the second book in this series, and I really love this. 4 out of 5 stars. The next book is The Cheerleaders by Kara Thomas. This is one of those books where I like it and love it at the same time, but it's not really on either side of the spectrum. It's kind of exactly in the middle. So I don't really know how I feel about this book. There are some parts of it that I love, like the ending. That was so surprising. And I love how the author finished it off, and even though everything was kind of resolved at the end, she just gave us an extra punch just to show you, oh my god, there's so much that we didn't know. It was really good, and I just love the story in general. It's so interesting. Yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Emma by Jane Austen. So this is a classic, and normally I'm not a big fan of classics, and I proved myself right. So I rated this 2 out of 5 stars because I just wasn't that invested in the story, and I just didn't want to read it at all. I had to listen to the audiobook while reading the physical book just so that I can get through every single chapter. And it is very long. It's 450 pages. And this may seem like a smaller book, but the pages are super thin, so that's very deceiving. But I was interested in the story because it reminded me of Clueless, obviously because Clueless is based off of this book, but honestly, I like Clueless a lot more than this, and I'm kind of disappointed in this book, even though so many people love it, but for me, it's just not it. I think I don't really like classics, and maybe I've been spoiled by a bunch of the books that I've been reading that I actually like, so I know my taste very well, and I guess from now on, I should recognize that classics aren't really my thing. If you like classics, go ahead, read this, but if you like the same books that I do, you may like it, but you may not like it. The next book I read was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. This book I had very high expectations for just because my mom said it was one of the best thrillers that she's read, and it was one of the only ones that surprised her. And yeah, sure, it did surprise me as well, but I thought there would be more action near the end of the book. That was kind of disappointing, and I actually watched the movie a couple nights after I read this book, and obviously the movie version isn't as good as the book, but I feel like the movie was pretty close to the book, and there are a couple things that I didn't really see and some things that didn't correspond well between the book and the movie version, but I just don't see myself reading this again, and this was my first introduction to adult thrillers and mysteries, so I really hope that I find a lot more books that are better than this one. Overall, it was a really good read. I love the mystery and the plot twist. The big plot twist, if you've read this book, you know what I'm talking about. That absolutely surprised me, but there weren't that many other big plot twists, which I'm kind of disappointed about, but overall, it was a good read. And then the last book that I read for the reading rush is Blood, Water, Paint by Joy McCullough. And this book I rated 5 out of 5 stars. It is so good, and it basically tells the true story of Artemisia Gentileschi, who was a famous painter in 17th century Rome. This book is so annoying because it shows how little men cared for women back then. and it tells the true story of her rape and how she deals with that and the feminism in their time and how men didn't believe women and all the allegations that she came forward with. They just blew them right off, and it was really disappointing to see that, but she is such a strong character and I loved reading this. I read it in about 2 hours. It's written in verse, so it's a really fast read, and I just love books written in verse. Overall, it was a very emotional read and very aggravating at times just because of the poor treatment Artemisia experiences. But that's what makes this book so good, because it gives us insight onto what it was like as a woman back then. I highly recommend you read this book. It is so good and I absolutely love it. And lastly, the last book or the last series that I started in July is the Throne of Glass series, which I am super excited that I started reading this. It is such a huge series. So I started this kind of the second week of July, I'd like to say, and I thought I would finish this by the end of July, but I kind of forgot about the reading rush, so I had to stop right in the middle of this series. Like at the point of the reading rush, I got like about halfway through Queen of Shadows, and then I had to take a week-long break. And then I just started it back up a couple days ago, and luckily I finished it. And right now I'm currently reading Empire of Storms, and I'm about halfway through that, and hopefully by the time July 31st comes around, I would have finished this. I love this series so far. It definitely lives up to the hype. I've rated all of these books so far 4 out of 5 stars. They are so good, and I highly recommend that you read this series. Okay, so those are all the books that I read in July. I read 17 books, which is a lot higher than the 12 books I read last month in June. Now at the beginning of August, I'll probably finish the Throne of Glass series. I'm really excited for that, especially since the last book is almost 1,000 pages long, which it is very daunting, but I know that I will love reading it. Then after that, I will start my summer reading. School starts in a little less than a month, so I have 4 books to read by then, and I know I can do it since the books are pretty short, but I'll have my summer reading vlog up in a couple weeks for you guys to watch. And then after that, I'll probably read ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And just overall in 2020, I've read over 100 books so far. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this in the future. And it also just motivates me to keep on making videos. And don't forget to give a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video.